What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aiden, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about whether or not the Chicago Bulls can replicate their performance against the Denver Nuggets over into this next game against the Houston Rockets. Now, at the end of the day, we already know the scaling of where Denver is compared to where Houston is in the Western Conference. However, they are definitely a team that is unique and different compared to Denver, and they provide their own problems. So that being said, I want to kind of see whether or not the Bulls can come in with that same mentality that they brought in that Denver game in order to execute a win over in Houston, who did, I believe, beat us previously when we last faced. So before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show. Turn notifications on and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and their chances to beat the Houston Rockets over in Houston. Now, the first thing I will say is that just because they beat us over in Chicago does not necessarily mean that they are the favorites to win in Houston. But I think we've seen with the Chicago Bulls team that there are certain matchups that will hurt them. Those big athletic teams, the switchable teams, the teams that like to run as well. These are the teams that hurt us more than anything. And I think that's why we produced such a great performance against Denver, is because we finally outran a team first and foremost, but they weren't necessarily a team that used their height to their advantage. They were more perimeter based. They were more shooting their threes type of team in that specific game. And therefore, we took advantage of that with our good qualities, our defensive plays, our steals and deflections, turnovers leading to points, our transition points, and things like that. That's where the most dominating factors of the game really came for the Chicago Bulls. Now, to answer the question of whether or not we can, I guess, replicate that performance over into Houston, of course my answer to this would be yes, but not to the fullest extent. Because as you already know in the NBA, every NBA team has different challenges, and Denver are a team that doesn't necessarily like to use their pace a whole lot. When you got Nikola Jokic running your point guard spot, it is very hard to be a transition team as well. You can't be every team in the NBA. You can't have every single, I guess, good thing about you. There's always going to be weaknesses to a team. With Houston, their weaknesses are not necessarily the same as Denver's. Houston is a very young, very athletic team. They will be switching most likely, and they are going to be a team that will like to run as well. They're also a fairly, I would say, somewhat isolation team. Because of their young caliber players, they want to make, I guess, good impressions in the NBA. They're not necessarily, I guess, well orchestrated together. Yes, it's a long way through to the season now, but some of these teams, again, continuity, the big word here, they are around for multiple years and they can get those plays that, I guess, a first year team wouldn't necessarily have in many ways, if you know what I'm trying to say. So you will expect fairly a lot of isolation from Houston, but you'll also expect transition points. You'll also expect them to run, and therefore with their ability to run with us, that also makes it, I guess, harder to be a team that also scores in transition as well. Denver didn't run with us. I think Houston will run with us, and therefore you can't necessarily replicate what we actually did well in that game. You can't always beat them out in transition. You can't always get easy opportunities from layups. You can't always drive to the basket with very little to no rim protection there. So again, these are things that we're going to have to be very mindful of. And what we saw with Houston is that if you give that team confidence, they will run through you. Doesn't matter how many wins or losses they have. The last thing that we need to give them is confidence. The way that I want this game to go is that I expect this game to hopefully be us dominating in the first half and hopefully not giving them that sniff to come back. Not like what we do with other teams, or specifically the Indiana Pacers. It seems like we always do that with the Pacers. We go out to a lead and they come back. That's what we need to kind of focus on in this game, getting that lead, being on a 20-30 point lead, and making sure they don't come back from that situation, and not giving a team confidence, not allowing teams to come back into the game bit by bit by bit. And I think Houston is one of those teams that can do that, so you got to be very careful in that way as well. But I do expect the Bulls to come out with the same intensity. It's not just the running that got us through those, I guess, moments. It was the intensity. It was cutting with intensity. Our half-court sets were very good ball movement, player movement, and there was always intent behind the plays that we ran and the passes that we made. And there were so many open dunks, even in the half-court sets, because We actually had motive and intent to get those dunks and to get those open shots. Those plays were ran really, really well. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that every game. Every game it has been different. It has been lackadaisical some games. It has been good in other games. And that's why our offense is probably the most inconsistent and one of the worst offenses in the league. It's because it's just not sustainable how we play it. So we do need to figure things out. But if we can bring that same intensity, doesn't matter how the game really goes, doesn't matter if it's a slow half-court set game or it's two teams running at each other, if you bring the intensity, we have the talent there to beat the Houston Rockets. But that's what it comes down to. We've seen us lose to Houston, we've seen us lose to a lot of bad teams in the NBA, and it's mainly because we don't bring that same level of intensity as you would against the Denver Nuggets, or that you would against the Brooklyn, or that you would against the Boston or Milwaukee. And we've lost to all these teams as well, by the way, or at least most of these teams. So, again, you got to just bring that same intensity every single game. I think what DeMar DeRozan said is probably how it's said best. You got to treat every game like a Game 7 now. There is no time to slack off. There is no time to give away games. And yes, it's an away game. I still expect us to have a very difficult time over in Houston, but I do expect us to win this game because we just don't have time to lose. And knowing where we are compared to where Houston is, look, it's not that far away, but we're still the favorites to win that game. And I expect the Chicago Bulls to deliver on the night. And hopefully some things that we've seen in the previous games will remain the same. For example, hopefully Zach LaVine will have a great game today against the Houston Rockets. Hopefully he will step up and deliver for the Chicago Bulls when we need him most. Hopefully guys like Patrick Williams off the bench will come in and just play really aggressive. Go for those dunks, run out in transition, just be a physical force in the game. Hopefully he can be that against the Houston Rockets. It always doesn't hurt when you see him only miss one shot in a game and he's 8 from 9. So again, I'd love to see that continue as well, but I think that's asking a bit too much from Patrick Williams. But that same intensity when he's going for drives or when he's just being really aggressive, we need to see more of that. Vucevic, his best game in a long time, Vucevic. He's had a down period thus far towards the end, the post-All-Star break. We need to see more of what we saw with Nikola Vucevic in this game compared to other games. Beating his plays in transition, something I never thought I would see. Of course, Jokic is not typically quick, but still is a player that I never thought Vucevic would outrun. And again, it's just him being super aggressive and attacking the paint as well, while also making his three-point shots, having that nice addition in there, and his rebounding is back at his best as well. We need to see these things. So the stats side of things, I want to see remain the same, because that was a great game against Denver. But the actual game itself, it might not go how we want it to go. We might not see the same run and open layup opportunities that we saw against Denver. But that doesn't mean that we can't bring that intensity and that same fighting factor in this game, so we can approach the game however we need to approach it and win the game. Most importantly, the win is the most important thing here, and let's bring it back to Chicago. Let's win this game. I believe our next game after this is in Chicago. Let's come back to Chicago with a positive, I guess, small West Coast trip, I guess you could say. And that's all I'm going to talk about today. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you in the next Chicago Bulls video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care and peace.